Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Donut Hole, your place where a couple of guys sit around and pontificate about things. My name's Paul.
And I'm Jason.
And today in studio we have our guest, Will. Say hi, Will.
Hello.
So, Will, tell us a little bit about yourself real quick.
I've known this guy here for quite a while, and we talk about a lot of random things, and I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, you're kind of, I suppose, our resident guest conspiracy guy, so we're going to get into that here in just a little bit. As many of you guys know, I was recently out of the country on a trip to Taiwan, and I also went to Indonesia. So I actually brought back a little bit of liquor so we can have a little drinking around Asia tour. So I guess let's go ahead and get started. I know both you guys seem to really be whiskey fans. I'm not the biggest whiskey fan in the world, but brought some of that back. So I think we're going to start off with this one here. We got Japanese manufactured Suntory whiskey. So let's give this a shot and see what you guys think.
Let's do it.
All right.
I don't have an empty glass.
You don't have an empty glass. Well, kill it real quick.
Okay. Pour yours, and I'll kill mine.
There we go. You guys will have to tell me what you think of this.
Lunchtime drinking?
It's a good, nice little. This is from the House of Suntory. So, 80 proof Japanese whiskey here.
Is it a rice whiskey?
The specifics, I'm not quite sure. I know it's a very big name whiskey. They're one of the largest manufacturers out of Japan.
It's pretty good.
As far as whiskeys go, which I'm not a big whiskey fan. I actually kind of do like this. So.
It doesn't taste fruity, but it reminds me of some fruity notes in it. Some fruit aroma.
It's also very different from American whiskey. I think it's almost got a slight reminiscence to Scotch as well.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
I know the Japanese are really big on their Scotch as well. So.
Yeah, it's just got that slight taste of, it's almost like a blend between American whiskey and Scotch, the flavor.
It's not a sour mash, is it?
No.
Yeah, I can tell. I like it.
Mm-hmm. Very clean taste.
Sure.
Oh, it's all Japanese. Never mind. I can't read it.
Let's see what I can make out of it for you. Actually, no, it's all in Chinese because I bought it in Taiwan at 7-Eleven. But I do speak Mandarin, but reading it's another story. I guess. It starts off Suntory. Yeah, basically it's just saying, milliliters and alcohol percentage and all that stuff.
It doesn't give you a backstory of its creation story.
No, I mean, this is one of the smaller bottles you'd pick up at 7-Eleven, for pre-game before you go out on a night at a town. These things were not terrible.
For pre-gaming before a podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's, I know the Japanese, when I last was managing restaurants and ordering a lot of whiskey, we would have a lot of supply problems sometimes with different brands because the Japanese would buy up so much of it that it would change the pricing structure in the U.S. I know Four Roses ran into that a lot, and then they eventually bought Jim Beam Distillery, which a lot of good old boys were upset with. They didn't think the Japanese should own it. But they're still, still the same distillers putting out the same product, but just Japanese owned.
Mm-hmm. And if you are hearing a little crackling in the audio, it's because here in just outside of our Nashville studio, it is really snowy, so we decided to light a little fire here in the fireplace. So if you hear a little crackling in the background, that's kind of what that's about. So, anyway, guys, let me know when you're finished with the whiskey. We'll move on to the next gem of Asia.
You're going to get me hammered.
Yeah, that's, like I said, lunchtime drinking.
Yeah. Well, that's why, Jason's been nice enough to prepare this little spread food we got out here. So.
Yeah, I figured some of the, higher fat meats and cheeses would coat the belly for the liquor.
Bar food, baby.
Yeah, that's what they teach you in the Alcohol Beverage Commission classes is the only thing that slows it down is fatty foods. That's why it's all chicken wings and cheese sticks and stuff. Yeah, for for 7-Eleven whiskey, that's pretty smooth.
Well,
One
that's
thing, it doesn't give me any hint of an Asian flavor.
No, I mean it's the Japanese are pretty regular whiskey drinkers. They're really big connoisseurs of it. I know sometimes we'd have Japanese businessmen in the bar that I usually frequent in Taiwan. Shout out to the hop in Taiwan. But yeah, sometimes we get some of them and they drink a fair amount of.
I love me some sake. So I love hot sake.
Well, we are doing we do have a Japanese plum wine here in a bit. That's going to actually probably be the finish.
Nice.
So we're going to hit that. But yeah, as far as 7-Eleven booze, they actually carry a lot of different things in 7-Eleven. It's not just, here we think 7-Eleven, we think kind of low grade stuff. But I mean, they carry, I think, Johnny Walker Blue Label.
Oh, wow.
Granted, those aren't going to be out where everybody can grab it, but they have it. And it's behind the counter, but they have it.
That reminds me of Chicago. You go up to Chicago and you can get just about anything in a regular convenience store.
Mm-hmm.
Almost every store is like a Walgreens,
Yeah.
Plus booze.
Yeah. 7-Eleven's kind of 7-Eleven and Family Mart are both kind of like really the two main largest convenience stores in Taiwan, and you can get anything you need 24 hours a day through 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of the few places that are open during Chinese New Year.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Chicago. I went to high school up there, and that was a lot of the way the high school kids got booze was to steal it from grocery stores.
Well, we just pulled Hey Misters.
Yeah. Can you get me some, mister? I'll give you $20. Yeah, a lot of the kids I went to school with, because some of those grocery stores in Chicago, I mean, it's like, they've got huge sections of liquor.
Yeah, they'll have a couple of aisles.
Yeah, and some, the more daring kids would just grab the plastic bottles and put it inside the Coke.
So in Taiwan, do they have a lot of Dollar Generals, or is that more strictly just Japan?
That would probably be a Japan thing. So I don't recall seeing any of those at all. They've got similar type stores. As far as something kind of similar to Dollar General, they have a store that I frequented a lot when I lived there called Xiaomi Mai Guo. And it's kind of like your dollar store thing. You can get all kinds of crazy things there, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
They don't have Walmarts, surprisingly. In
Good for
Taiwan.
them.
They have
Good for them.
My motto is Walmart's always a mistake. Every time I go there, I say, this is a mistake.
Yeah.
They have the French equivalent, which is a company called Carrefour.
Okay.
Probably a little bit more higher scale, higher end, but it's kind of the same deal. It's one-stop shop.
It's not hard to be higher scale than Walmart.
Surprisingly, though, funny you said that, because actually, if you go to mainland China, Walmarts are actually kind of higher scale.
Really?
And they actually even have, oddly enough, they have great value beer at Walmart. I kid you not. It's actually not terrible either.
Yeah.
So
It might be better than Bud Light.
They have a brand, because Colby was drinking it,
Mhm.
that they sell here too. It wasn't called Great Value. I can't remember what it was, but it was just like a can that basically said beer on it, and it came in like 15 packs, It was, Colby was bringing that camping for a while.
yeah, in Taiwan they have this. It comes in a white and yellow can. It's called bar beer. It's like one of the cheapest beers you can get at 7-Eleven. It's but a lot of people like it.
I remember we used to have in the gas stations around here. You remember Beer 30? Because
Yes, I do.
It came in 30 packs. So they give you a case plus a 6-pack.
It was right next to the Steel Reserve.
Mm-hmm. And I'd never tried it, but I always saw it and thought, hey, that's hilarious. 30 packs of beer for cheap.
So the next one we're gonna try is stuff called Galion. It's I think this one is made on like the Quemoy Islands, Kinmen, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Buddy of mine handed it off this to me because I guess he toured the factory. He was like, "Hey, I got this, and I don't drink this crap. I know you do." So I figured this would be another fun little one to try. This is kind of the national spirit, if you will, of Taiwan, and they have something very similar in China, which I think you've tried before, Jason, the baijiu stuff.
Yeah.
So
this is an anise flavor.
Well, it's flavored with sorghum and rice. It's distilled with those. So
Yeah, because that other stuff was definitely an anise, almost like an absinthe flavor.
some people get different flavors out of them, but let's see what you guys think of this. This is definitely an acquired taste. Will, you might have a little difficulty with this one. I apologize in advance. But
Why do you say that?
It's one of those things that will grow on you the more you drink it.
I don't mind it. It reminds me of a Sauvignon Blanc. It's kind of grassy. It's earthy.
Yeah, this is definitely less anise licorice flavor than the last one you brought over.
Well, the last one probably was kind of bottom.
I was going to say, I can tell this one's a lot better quality than that last one.
Yeah, getting this stuff in the U.S. is pretty rough. And
Is this considered a liqueur?
no, this is straight up liquor. This is 45% alcohol by volume.
It doesn't taste that dissimilar
90
from
proof.
some Sauvignon Blanc.
I think some of that's the ice.
Could be. And a mixture of the residue of the other drinks. Who knows?
Yeah, there's probably a little bit of that. But
I see what you're saying. That's very herbaceous.
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah, usually this stuff is usually drink neat. So on the rocks is a bit of a change, but it probably dulls out some of the things that would probably kick you otherwise.
That would make a really good martini.
With
Just
vermouth?
a clean, well, maybe with vermouth.
I think it would go well with vermouth because vermouth's basically white wine as well.
But yeah, this is usually drank straight and just shot glass.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Is that the one they have the little bitty shot glasses because they drink so many damn shots
yeah,
that they have to have the smaller shot glasses?
yeah. That reminds me. There was back in 2008 when I was teaching English in mainland China. We had to go to, I think it was the principal or the dean, one of the two. Their kid was getting married, so we were invited to the wedding. So of course we go to the wedding, prepare one of the red envelopes with money in it, hand it off. Which actually, thankfully, it wasn't a lot, but it was still fun. Throw 100 renminbi in, which is like at the time like 12 or 14 bucks. Throw it in a red envelope, put it down there. We get to go drinking and eat at the banquet. Because really, Chinese weddings, that's mostly what it's about. It's the banquet. And unfortunately for the poor sap of a groom, he has to go to every table and do shots with everybody of this stuff.
90 proof liquor.
I mean, I thought it was bad, just me having to do shots with everybody at my table. No, this guy has to go table to table.
And that's like their custom?
Yeah.
Now, does he have to do a shot with each person or just with the table?
He has to do it with the table,
Uh-huh.
but then there might be the person who catches him while he's in between tables.
Yeah, his uncle and
His
says,
uncle,
hey,
yeah, exactly. So, and you got to figure it, there's probably like 50, 60 tables.
Large families, yeah.
Well, with Chinese weddings, the way it works is because the primary wedding gift is always a red envelope with money in it.
Mm-hmm.
So they present that, and then the notion is the more people you invite to the wedding, the better off you're going to be, because the red envelope covers more than the dinner. Mm-hmm. So it's, an additional, it's like, hey, this is kind of a boost for me and my wife or what have you when you
It's almost like a fundraiser.
Exactly, it's a fundraiser. But it's also kind of like a loan, because if you invite your buddy to your wedding, he's expecting you to go to his when he has a wedding. So he's going to invite you. So really, it's kind of a loan.
So the more people get married and the more time goes by, the bigger the weddings get.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's just what goes around comes around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not as far as money, but it's the same in Saudi where you have weddings that they rent out an entire hotel.
Mm-hmm.
The entire hotel.
So destination weddings aren't necessarily a thing.
Hotel weddings. Nice hotel, nice banquet, nice spread. I mean, this one, it was a pretty decent spread too. I mean, they even had like live tanks with like the fresh fish and stuff in it.
When I used to work at the hotel in Franklin, they'd have Indian weddings there, and there was like 900 to 1,000 people on average.
Yeah.
They were big weddings.
Yeah, Chinese weddings are the same way. I actually did security for an Indian wedding in Nashville, so I know exactly what you're talking about. And those are fun.
Had good music too,
Yeah.
lots of dancing. It was a big show, big fun time.
Yeah. Chinese weddings are kind of in the same vein, big show, lots of food, lots of fun and dancing and drinking. More so drinking.
That's what it's all about.
The Indian ones.
So basically, American weddings that are 200 people that we consider large are actually small compared to
Small
most other countries.
terrible.
Yeah, because it
affairs.
was the same in Saudi. There was 400 or 500 people at a wedding.
All right, so let's move on to the next one. This next one, I really apologize about.
Oh, that's not a good.
This one has
intro.
a story.
He's already apologized to me once about this already.
Oh no!
This is some terrible, terrible stuff. This is some garbage Vietnamese manufactured vodka. So a little bit of backstory.
You've sold it very well.
Yes. Well, it has a backstory. So in Taiwan, you get a lot of people that work in various industries, various migrant laborers from around Asia. So you get Filipinos that come in, you get Vietnamese, you get people from Indonesia, and they kind of come to Taiwan on a work visa, usually working in lower skilled areas. So One of those, an example of that would be they work in factories, right? So like soldering, like semiconductors onto circuit boards, because we all know that a lot of electronics are made in Taiwan. You got Asus, MSI, a bunch of different companies, HTC, and plus a lot of components that are in other people's things. I think like the antennas that are in all cell phones are manufactured in Taiwan, or something like that. It's just a ridiculous amount of that kind of industry. And then plus there's also the home healthcare industry for taking care of the elderly, so there's those kind of jobs. Bunch of jobs that all these migrants come in to do. And Vietnamese are part of that. And there's a part of town near where I lived, because I lived in Taoyuan, and on the other side, behind the train tracks, there's a whole section of area where a lot of people, the foreigners, quote unquote foreigners, the other Asian immigrants, migrant workers, if you will, they kind of live and hang out. There's stores that specifically cater to them. And one of the things you can pick up at one of specifically the Vietnamese store, is this stuff. And
is it almost like a bodega?
Yeah, it's exactly what it is.
Okay,
think of it as like a Vietnamese bodega.
Yeah.
And it's cheap. I think this was maybe $1.50 US. Kind of put it in perspective.
Gasoline.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, it's only 29% alcohol by volume. 29.5.
That's strange.
Now I'm leaning towards rubbing alcohol.
That's under 60 proof for vodka.
For vodka, yeah. So it's like the Vietnamese couldn't, they had a little bit of help from the Russians during the American-Vietnamese War, and they couldn't get vodka right.
Well, I've had Russian vodka that wasn't right either.
And this stuff is so bad. I ended up buying a big bottle of it when I was in Taiwan the first time around. And everybody that would teach at the school that I worked for that also was stuck living in the same accommodations that I was, kind of became part of our little friends group and what have you, and I made sure everybody did a shot of this stuff. And some people in the group lovingly referred to it as the foot liquor, because it was so bad.
Oh, shit!
And then recently on the trip back, I got a big bottle of it as well, and I brought it to my buddy Nathan, who owns the bar that I was referring to earlier. And I'm like, hey, I'm bringing this stuff in. Let me know if I need to pay for a corking fee. But everybody before the end of the night has to do a shot of this crap before they leave. And there's a buddy of mine, Kevin. He ended up taking a shot. He pulled me aside afterwards. He's like, Paul, I thought I liked you. You're a nice guy. You're always fun to be around.
We might be getting a repeat of that here soon.
Yeah. You made me drink this crap. I don't know what to think about you. I don't even know who you are anymore, Paul. What the hell? And I basically had to explain the whole story that, all my friends before we all drank this, it was a bonding moment. So we're about to have a bonding moment.
So we're all currently going to have to put ourselves in the mindset of we are currently, all right, yeah, so we're immigrant workers.
Well, we're going to have to do 2 shots of this stuff.
We're sleeping in tents and we don't even have shoes.
No, they have proper accommodations. They just don't get days off.
I'm getting this water, getting this ready here. If you need to grab this water, go ahead, because I know I might need a little chaser.
So, gentlemen, cheers.
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 It's actually not as bad as you described it.
You undersold it. That's not too bad.
No.
Well, this is actually the better of the 2 labels.
Okay.
And I think I think the reason they did low alcohol is because it doesn't burn or have that, rubbing alcohol that you get off of some vodkas. Because it does have a hint of that, and I think if it was full alcohol, it would probably be pretty nasty.
Well, the one that was really bad was the red label. I was nice and got you guys the blue label. So.
Well, I don't know to what degree our palate is saturated, but this is not that bad. It's really not.
No, it's like watery, cheap vodka.
I mean, Southern Comfort is bad compared to this.
Well, again, this is the blue label. I was referencing actually the red label.
Oh,
so
okay.
I did bring it up a little bit for you guys.
Yeah. No, this isn't bad at all.
Actually, what it tastes like to me is, because I've never been a fan of Absolute vodka. I always thought Absolute vodka tastes and smells like rubbing alcohol. And this tastes like a half a shot of Absolute and a half a shot of water. It's, so it's not terrible.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
Well, next time I'll make sure to bring the red bottle.
Now, is it supposed to be actual vodka?
That's what it is, yeah.
So that it's made
vodka Hanoi.
From Taiwanese potatoes.
No, this is Vietnamese.
Vietnamese potatoes.
Yeah. Or
grain.
Or grain. Yeah, it's probably actually made from rice, but it's some garbage rocket stuff.
Since 1898.
Rice fermentation, alcohol.
Well, then, if you heated it up, it would be sake, wouldn't it? If it's rice booze.
Sake wine, though.
Sake's wine, yeah. Whereas this is
Distilled.
Okay.
Yeah, not great, but you oversold it. It's not as bad as you said.
Yeah.
Would I choose to drink it? No.
But hey, when in Taiwan.
Yeah. Yeah, this is, again, one of those things that you would get at, like, cause they also have, like, a nightclub there, that's open on the weekends, sometimes, for, the immigrant laborers. And they open at, like, noon, and they close at 5 in the morning on Saturday, and then they open again at, like, noon on Sunday and close at midnight, because, obviously, they want everybody back to work, first thing in the morning on Monday, so they close early on Sunday. But, they sell this there as well. And
So is there a large immigration population in China?
in Taiwan, yeah, there's a fair amount of it. Like I said, there's a lot of people that work in a lot of those various industries, like home healthcare, semiconductors, things like that.
Now, just aside from, are they what they would consider legal immigrants over there?
Most of them, yes. Most of them come over on a work visa. Everything's hunky-dory. However, there is instances of people saying, screw you to their employer, screw you to my contract, and then because their green card, if you will, is tied to their employment. So if they kind of go missing in action, if you will, then they become illegal. And then it's funny because a lot of the cops get all, immigration and everything. They're all like, "Oh, we got to find all these illegals and stuff." And it's kind of sad actually, because they do a lot of profiling over there. The cops do. So actually, this reminds me of a time we were on the other side of the train tracks. My buddy Jeff and I. Jeff is from South Africa, and we're both living and working there. We both have our green cards, our Taiwanese green cards, or ARC cards. And it's funny, we see a couple of cops come over and harass a couple of Indonesians, and the Indonesians get out their green cards and show them the cops and everything. But I'm like, hey, it's kind of crappy they're doing that. Like, hey, let's go mess with the cops. So we get out.
Glad they didn't pick us.
So we get out our ARCs, and I approach the cops in Mandarin. I approach them. I'm like, hey, do you want to check ours? We're forwarders too, And they're like, oh no, we don't need to. And they got it and they left. It's pretty funny. But yeah, a lot of the immigrant laborers, like from other places in Southeast Asia, really kind of get a hard time of it, which kind of sucks. Mm-hmm.
Well, you're obviously much more astute to the goings on of what's in China. I kind of had the impression that they had such a giant population that they'd be warding off immigrants.
That's China, not Taiwan.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah. So you think about it. China is the communist, quote unquote communist. I say that they're the most capitalist place I've ever been in my life.
I do remember hearing in the past year or so that there's been some bit of animosity between Taiwan and mainland China.
Yeah, that actually goes back to 1949. It would be a long story to get into. Basically, I'll try to give you the short version of it, which would be that the Imperial China had a war with Japan. Japan won the war. China lost. China ceded Taiwan to Japan in the late 1800s. China then became a republic, no longer an empire, became the Republic of China. The founder and kind of head honcho of the Republic of China died. There was a power struggle. A guy named Chiang Kai-shek comes to power. He's heading up the nationalist forces, and he kind of has a rift with the communists. There's some infighting with the communists. We'll simplify it. Mao becomes the head of the communists. Chiang Kai-shek's head of the nationalists. They're fighting a civil war, and then World War II breaks out. Japan invades. So now there's a three-way war going on in China. The United States kind of intervenes and tells both the nationalists and communists to try to play nice as much as possible and focus on the Japanese. World War II ends. Japan has to give back all territories seized through conflict, which would include Taiwan. Taiwan is giving back to China, whoever you want to accept as China at this time. The Civil War resumes. Mao and Chiang Kai-shek continue to fight. Mao wins. Chiang Kai-shek retreats to Taiwan, sets up his government in exile there. Civil War still technically going on. Mao says Taiwan's ours, and Chiang Kai-shek says no, mainland China's ours. And it was up until the 1970s when Nixon went to China mainland China. And up until that point, the whole world recognized Taiwan as China. And it was only because the Soviet Union and China had a rift between them. So, since China was no longer friends with the Soviet Union, the United States steps in and says, hey, China, we'll be friends with you since you don't like the Soviets anymore. The ironic thing is the United States signed a mutual defense treaty with the people of Taiwan saying, hey, if China ever invades you, we're going to come defend you. So that's where it's at. China said you can only recognize one of us as China. So the United States says, well, you're bigger and you don't like the Soviet Union, so we're going to go with you. But we assured Taiwan at the same time we're going to defend you.
That's a can of worms. That could definitely turn into hours upon hours of conversation. Right?
Yeah, so that was the very short, condensed version of it. So,
who was it? Was it Henry Kissinger who said only Nixon could go to China?
Yeah.
I think it was Kissinger who said that. Just like only Trump can go to North Korea.
Right?
There's a big historical parallel there. There's a huge historical parallel
Yeah.
there.
Hopefully we'll get out of Cold War politics and move forward with because that's the only reason why things are the way they are.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that we're all just in a hangover from World War II. Absolutely.
Well, let's move on to the last bottle as far as booze tour around Asia. We've got a nice Japanese plum wine.
Plum wine.
Yeah, it's actually really good. Although you might not care for it because it is sweet.
No, that's okay. I just don't like my bourbon sweet. Cool. Thank you, sir.
I've had this stuff before where it has the plums in the bottle.
This is the same stuff.
I've had that before.
This is a smaller bottle so you don't get the plum.
That's really good.
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
It's a great dessert drink.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's nice and sweet, nice and tart.
After dinner drink, that's really cleanses the palate very well. Yeah.
That's why I decided that would be a good finish.
It reminds me of in Johnson City once a year they have the Blue Plum Festival where they harvest all their blue plums and they make blue plum wine. Tastes almost just like it. It's really good.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of it.
When is that in Johnson City?
I think it's usually around harvest time, I believe. It could be midsummer. I'm not sure.
You can check it out.
I only got to go once, and it was really fun. They had to shut down the whole city square and do the plum
Oh,
festival, have a big concert.
I used to go camping up there at Watauga Lake. You know where Watauga Lake is?
I don't think so.
It's in the Johnson City area, and I like it up there. The mountains are beautiful up there.
Mm-hmm. It's quite good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good finisher. Good finisher.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
round. Did you choose the order on purpose?
Yes.
Good job.
Yeah, you could make that into like a sorbet, and it would be really tasty.
Or you can just chug it.
That's true.
Yeah, I would have gotten a bigger bottle of that stuff, but I was already bringing enough booze and customs and all that. And I should have brought more because I could have got away with government shutdown and customs not really caring right now. So, but I didn't know how much it was going to be like that. I didn't want to have to dump anything at the airport.
Yeah.
So.
This is much better than the one I've had.
Cheers.
I had one in a
shutdown.
sushi restaurant.
I actually picked this one up in Tokyo, so on the way back.
Yeah, I've had the cheap stuff from the sushi restaurants around here, and it's not nearly as good as this.
Yeah, this was picked up. Although being in the airport, it was picked up in Tokyo Narita.
And I said sushi. That's that Vietnamese vodka going to the head.
It'll do that.
Yeah, delicious. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a very good round of booze that you supplied there. And I thank you.
Yeah, well, I figured I just got back from a trip from Asia, and I figured we'd do a little drinking around Asia tour.
It's very good. I mean, it beats the hell out of the normal just sake and Asahi beer that I've had.
Yeah. Sing Bao.
It's quite a treat. It's quite a treat.
Yeah.
I am kind of kicking myself. I wish I would have been able to get my hands on a smaller bottle of Tandway to bring back, which would be Filipino rum, because that would have been awesome. But
look, I have to say, you had me a little bit fearful with the vodka lead up, but fortunately, it wasn't that bad.
He brought me some North Korean liquor.
I did
last time. Yeah.
Was that made from like slave blood?
No, it's the same kind of stuff you would get in the South, but yeah, it's called something called soju, and it's basically Korea's take on sake.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically what it is. But anyway, I'll let you continue on with your thoughts on the soju from the DPRK.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. It was a lot like sake, but I think it was stronger.
Mm-hmm. It is.
It's got a little more alcohol to it, but believe it or not, overall not bad. I mean, it was basically like like a sake liqueur. It's not full strength liquor, but you know, it's stronger than sake. But yeah, it wasn't bad at all, really.
I love me some sake.
I guess it was only the elites over there that drank that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wasn't bad.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I do have a knack for getting crazy things.
Weird stuff, yeah.
Kind of a thing.
Well, I mean, that's, you know, you should. If you have that awesome privilege to be able to travel the world, to be able to experience and taste all the different things that there are to be had.
Yeah, something truly different.
Yeah, I'd love to go to California and try their unique things that cannot be had here, but, you know, or any other, or Canada for that matter. You know, I went to Canada this past year, and we arrived, and while we were there, they actually passed their legal marijuana like the week before we went, and I was like, cool, you know. And then like right before we went, they're like, but it won't be in effect until yada yada date, and I was like, no.
Oh, that's funny. That's like here when they did they sold the wine, you know, originally in the grocery store, and then they said, okay, we're going to start selling it on Sundays. Well, they did it in the liquor store for a year, and I saw so many people in the grocery store on Sunday with bottles of wine, and the clerks were like, nope. People were,
Yeah. They're like, I thought you changed the law.
yeah, they're like, we can get it in the liquor store. They're like, yeah, I know, but for some reason, for grocery stores, it's got to wait a year.
I don't know all the backstory on how that was all orchestrated legally, but you can still get it for cheaper at the liquor store. There's still, the supply chain is still favoring the liquor store.
Oh, absolutely.
And especially with the quality stuff, you know.
Yeah,
But it's just convenience.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
You know, I asked the people at my local wine store / liquor store, I was like, has this affected y'all's business? And they said, no, actually it's kind of increased our business a little bit because people don't want to see us go away.
Yeah.
People don't want us to become a non-entity in the local market. And, you know, I'm with them. Like, I could buy at the liquor store, at the grocery store, but I go instead to the place I've been going because I like the people and they do a good job and they have unique things that you'll never be able to find at the large box office stores, you know. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's. I think that was a huge concern is that they were thinking that that's why they gave the liquor stores a head start on some is they were afraid that grocery stores would outpace them. But I think, like you said, I don't think it's really had that much of an effect.
Well, but if you think about it, tell me one chain liquor store.
In Tennessee?
Yeah. There's not one.
Yeah. Liquor World.
I've never heard of them.
The only one I know is in Murfreesboro.
Yeah, they said there's one in Murfreesboro.
Frugal McDougal's.
Okay, Frugal McDougal's. Yeah. But like, if you go to like the local liquor stores, one of the things that they can sell is local brewed beer and local brewed spirits, and that's more of a county thing. But you know, that's a niche market that Kroger's or Publix or Costco cannot sell.
That said, though, having lived down in Florida as well, they have big, massive liquor stores, and they have them in Georgia as well. I know in Georgia they have Tower Liquors, which is amazing. ABC Wine or ABC Wine and Spirits, whatever it is, down in Florida, and you've got these places the size of Walmart with booze in them.
Wow!
From all over the world. Like, all kinds of cool stuff. So, honestly, when it comes to the big liquor store chains, I'm with them 110% because the selection is
I've never seen
terrible.
one of those in Tennessee.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not saying we always get these little rinky-dink things, and half the time I can't get half the booze I want. So I'll end up taking a trip down to Florida or down to Georgia, and I'll end up stocking up, filling up the car.
Liquor World is pretty
$500 on booze or so.
Liquor World's about half the size of a Walmart. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
But they're just now starting to come here. I think the only one I know of is Murfreesboro.
So, and when it comes to the grocery stores, I kind of like the fact they're doing it at grocery stores now because usually the only thing I'm going to get at grocery stores is going to be beer and wine because that's really, in fact, frankly, that's all they sell anyway. But, if you're, at the grocery store, you're picking out food, and it's like, oh, a nice bottle of wine would be good. Mm-hmm. I don't want to have to go source out a liquor store. Mm-hmm. And, I always had the bad luck because in Florida, we didn't have the whole Sunday rule. So that's where, I turned 21 when I was in Florida. So it was like, oh, it's Sunday, you just go, liquor store, go to wherever and buy your alcohol. It's fine. You have to wait till after 12, I think, or 11. But it wasn't a big deal. But here, every time I would go grocery shopping, of course, it'd be a Sunday, and I'd be like, oh, it'd be really great to go with this. It'd be a bottle of wine. Oh, we can't.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. It's like going to Chick-fil-A. The only time you want it's on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Sunday. It's like, oh,
You go any other day of the week, and there's a line around the block.
Yeah.
And you're like, nope.
That's probably why the grocery stores aren't hurting the liquor stores too. Is every time I bought a bottle of wine at a grocery store, I would not have gone to the liquor store to get it. Like you said, it's just an incidental. It's like, well, I'm going to make some pasta, some red wine. I'll go good with it. Whatnot.
Cooking wine, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I would not have made a separate trip. So that's a good point. I don't think that would affect the liquor stores much.
Well, guys, I think at this point we're going to take a little break. We'll get back to you guys here after the commercial break. And if there's any content that you'd like to see in the future, please reach out to us. We'd love to know what your thoughts are on the program, what you'd like to see, what you don't like, and try to create a show that not only we enjoy, but you guys enjoy as well.
And the more money you give us, the more we will like you.
Hello, and we're back from the break. Let's go ahead and, I guess, dive right into it. So let's hit up with some conspiracies. So I guess we'll just go straight in with JFK. It's kind of a good spot to start, I suppose. So, Will, how do you feel about JFK?
Well, everybody has a feeling or an opinion about it. And it's hard to dive into the subject whilst keeping your feelings and or preconceived notions at bay. But I think once if you're going to dive into the conspiracy realm at all, one of the first things you have to have is an open mind and a subjective mind. An objective mind. To look at the facts for what they are, And it's sometimes when you're digging back now 50 or 60 years, it's tough to judge what the facts are because you got so many different sources of, this narrative, that narrative, blah, 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 blah. But if you're open-minded enough to just look at it all, it's overwhelmingly obvious that there's holes in the story. And that we're not told the entire whole truth, We're given something that we're told is the entire and whole truth, but it just simply isn't.
And that's kind of how I feel on a lot of these conspiracy theories is that it's so hard to really prove anything or to get anywhere with it because they always include enough truth that you run into dead ends. What I think is usually what's obfuscated is motive, things like that. Did Lee Harvey Oswald shoot JFK? I believe yes, but why? I mean, that's where I get into it, is where was the real motives? Because that's something that's very easy to deceive people about.
Well, I think, going into the motives, I personally believe, I think there's more than one gunman. I think, Oswald might have taken a shot, but there was obviously somebody either from the grassy knoll or somewhere else that took a shot as well. Just the ballistics seem to indicate that as well. And then so does the narrative. I believe there's a paper released, I believe it was part of the recent batch, in reference with J. Edgar Hoover, director of the FBI at the time, I believe, who basically alluded to, we have to make sure that everybody buys our version of the story, because he didn't want there to be this giant conspiracy, which there already is. So there's that. But when you actually look at the motive behind why this is, there's a lot of good things that a lot of things that would indicate, without delving too much into some of the other topics we're going to get into later. For starters, after the Bay of Pigs invasion and some of the issues of the military-industrial complex, which we were warned about via, I believe it was President Eisenhower, with that potentially getting out of control, and then the debacle with the Bay of Pigs invasion into Cuba, this obviously kind of ticked off JFK a bit, and at this point he's like, I'm going to take the CIA and scatter it to the wind. I'm going to break it into smaller agencies. It's getting way too out of hand. So there was that. There was also the fact that he was pushing back against the Federal Reserve. That was also a big deal. Again, that's something we'll talk about a little bit later, I believe. But those things combined, then you factor in the fact that Herbert Walker Bush was, I believe, the field director of the CIA
Yes, he
there
was
at
in the
the
Dallas
time, in the
office,
Dallas
yes.
office at the
Yes,
time.
he was. Yeah.
And it's starting to kind of, even if, I kind of, like I said, I've already kind of put my personal belief out there on it. But even if everything is the narrative, there's a lot of weird, goofy things going on that kind of will raise an eyebrow to the narrative as
Right.
is given anyway. That's kind of my feelings on it.
Well, and you look at what's happening with Trump. Obviously, there's parallels to anybody who goes against the intelligence agencies and the deep state is going to pay for it dearly. Now, I know a lot of people don't believe in the deep state, but it is an objective truth. There is a deep state. There is a bunch of non-elected bureaucrats that have a lot of power in this country. And what they do with that power, I can't say. I don't have any proof. But it does seem that people who push back against that pay dearly for it. Whether that be like in Trump's case, simply, the rhetoric on TV, the investigations, or, perhaps in the JFK case to the extreme. I don't know. I don't know who did that or what. But the unelected bureaucracies are definitely a problem. And it's getting to where there's certain states. You look at a map of the employers in each state. Who's the number one employer? There's several states in this nation as the federal government. And as a capitalist society, I don't feel comfortable with that.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. We're definitely moving more away from a free market capitalist type society and moving more towards a further removed from a mixed market into this really weird crony
Crony capitalism, yeah.
Yeah, and that's really ultimately what it's become, and it's really unsettling. We're getting into this kind of Brave New World territory, I think, with a lot of this. Definitely kind of a world that Huxley would paint.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And if you had to paint a pivotal point at which the ball really got moving, a lot of people would point to the time when JFK died as that being the last true president that we had. And though there's something to be said for that, if you really delve into the conspiracy world, some people will say, oh, it's the Illuminati and it's been around for 1,000 years, or, so it gets obfuscated the further you try to delve into it, unless you're just trying to look at things objectively. And, if you really look at the trend of our country, yes, it started out with secret societies, and the founding fathers were members of the Freemasons, and yes, there is a thread of that. But was that thread always visible from the surface? No, But did it rear its head up when JFK died, around the time of Vietnam and the 60s? That was a pivotal point in America's history, obviously. So, take it from there. Is that when the CIA took over? What do you think? Is that when the invisible mob put its cloak around everything?
Yeah, I don't think it's really that cut and dry. I think it's a lot more nuanced than that.
Yes.
To say, and this is the same thing when we talk about the deep state. So, if you start talking about the deep state, people think you're crazy. That they kind of have this preconceived notion that you're talking about a bunch of guys smoking cigars in a shady room somewhere, and that's not really so much what it is. It's this little group of people that control this aspect. This group over here controls that aspect. This group that controls this aspect, and they all kind of talk to each other from time to time, and kind of have a loose association and some similar aims and goals, and that's about it. It's not like a shadow government gets together in a room. Despite that term sometimes being thrown around, and plans everything, schemes everything. That's not what it is.
Well, it could be argued that that's what Bilderberg is, and the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Relations.
Well,
but we can leave that aside. That's fine. I know what you're saying.
When you're talking about the deep state as a whole, when you're talking about like the various elements of Federal Reserve, the military-industrial complex, I don't think those guys get in the room together.
I agree.
Like in scheme. Now, I think there'll be some members of one and some members of another that might know each other and play golf on Sunday, and we'll talk about some things. And kind of say, this is kind of the direction we're thinking. No, this is the direction we're thinking. But it's not like these, basement kind of things with, smoke-filled rooms where everybody's calling the shots and it's this giant,
Well, ultimately, what you get with these unelected bureaucrats is you get career bureaucrats who work in an agency, say the EPA, State Department, what have you, for 20 or 30 years. Well, they obviously have their own agenda. They can claim they're bipartisan or whatever, but they obviously have their own goals and own agenda for the department they work in. And then they get a president who, or Congress who they view as radically against their agenda they've been working for 20 years. Well, what are they going to do? It's human nature. They're going to continue to work for the agenda they've worked for 20 years. They're just going to do it subversively. They're going to do it as best they can. It's like working any normal job where, you've been working hard to improve this and that for so many years. Then some new manager comes in who's just terrible. But you still continue to try to do what you did to make the place a better place. But the problem with implementing that in the government is it's just unaccountable folks just doing their agenda and just continuing on. They have those jobs for 40 years. That's the problem.
Yeah. Well, that's a good little touch on JFK. Let's talk about 9/11. Kind of move along the conspiracy.
I think we can keep a continuing thread going on there. We're talking about the deep state bureaucrats and et cetera. Before we talk about 9/11, let's talk about what happened the day before 9/11 when Donald Rumsfeld sat before the Senate and claimed that they were missing, how much was it? $6.5 billion? Trillion dollars.
Yeah.
And then the next day, everyone forgot about it. But are you all familiar with a woman by the name of Catherine Austin Fitts? She used to be the secretary for HUD and she was their lead accountant, I suppose. She's an accountant essentially, and she was on the case. She had pretty much sniffed out all that missing money before Donald Rumsfeld even said it. And so when he did, her account of it is that she's like, "There's no going back now. There's nothing they can do to cover this up." And then the next day it was 9/11. Now since that time, she has come to discover that not only is it 6.5 trillion, it's up to 21.5 trillion, I believe now, of unaccountable adjustments from the federal government's, from the DOD and HUD. And there's another professor, and I can't remember his name at the time right now, but he's also corroborated her findings that all of that money is there's something draining off of our system going somewhere.
And it's funny you mentioned that because just recently, Ben Carson, the presidential candidate, who is the HUD secretary now, found billions of quote-unquote accounting errors, which you saw in minor news stories here and there, but they just kind of covered it up. You don't hear Ben Carson's name anymore, even though he was a presidential candidate. He got appointed to that position and found, not nearly what she found, but sizable errors. And
is he still in his position?
I believe so, yeah. But there's been no more mention of it.
The funny thing also is where the plane hit allegedly, and I say allegedly, into the Pentagon was, I believe, also the budgetary office.
Yes, that was exactly the office that was responsible for that documentation for that 6.5 trillion missing dollars. And so getting back to being objective about the situation, one thing that bothers me the most is when I try to bring up the subject to talk about 9/11 with people. One thing that just can't people just can't seem to get over is that, like, I put it in this perspective. It's like, you have not, there's more security cameras around that building than any other place in the United States, just about. And we've gotten like 4 frames of video, and that's it. But yet most people believe what they tell us, except they won't give us the video. Give me the video. Show me the plane hitting, because I know you have it. And people just say, "Oh, well, they didn't do it for security reasons or this reason or that reason." And that's just Stockholm syndrome, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. If we don't have that video that we know that exists, someone's covering something up. It's as simple as that. I'm not saying it was a missile. I'm not saying it was whatever. I'm not saying what it was. I'm just simply saying that we are being deceived.
Well, with that one also, there's no plane wreckage. The plane would have to be hitting too low to actually hit where it hit. That one is a little suspect.
You can watch hours upon hours of all the details that are inconsistent on that subject, and we could delve into that if you want, but I think we'd just be rehashing something that most people already know. And yes, you can see videos where there's pieces that look like a plane, but where'd the wings go? Why is the hole so small? We've all seen Fahrenheit 9/11. It's just I've come to realize that it's if you're going to try to wrap your head around the subject, you're only going to be able to do so unless you've broken your programming.
Well, like I've discussed with you in the past, I don't buy the whole Dick Cheney, they want to go to war and Iraq thing. That's too weak of a motive. However, I do totally agree with you that there's definitely some inconsistencies that need to be answered. And like you said, you have to start from that open mind point of you can't just immediately jump to conclusions. Oh, it's Dick Cheney, it's Halliburton. You have to be open to, I've heard everything from it was a Jewish conspiracy. Why would Israel do it? I have no idea. I've heard all kinds of crazy things. But just going by the facts, you got to start with square one, like you said, and find out what happened and then find out who's behind it. You can't just jump and say, oh, okay, this is who's behind it and this is why. You have to find out the definitive facts of what happened first.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately is difficult.
What's the lady that believes in the directed energy weapons theory? Do y'all remember her name?
Oh no, the one where where they're starting the California wildfires and doing other things with the directed energies. I mean, it's a whole thing.
Yeah, I wish I could remember her name. She makes it. I mean, I'm familiar with the concepts behind the science and how you can disassociate matter with electric energy fields and radio waves interference. And she makes a great case, but then she also peppers in there like there were no planes, like they were holograms. Or she doesn't actually say that, but she intimates that very clearly. And it's just, for me, that just, you can't go there because because if that's true, white flag, man, they won. If they really if they really did holograph those planes in there and do the whole thing, it doesn't matter if I know if they did it or not. They can do anything they want. It's over. Yeah, it's already over. If that's the truth, then here's my guns. I'll just be a slave. Because I can't do anything.
Well, it's like the whole theory about the missing money. I watched a documentary the other day about the deep underground military bases, and there's a whole network all over the world, and that's what they're using the money for, is to basically build this military complex all over the world. And then they tie in extraterrestrials with it. And, in that one, I'm kind of like you. I'm like, well, if that's the case, if there's an entire another world underground,
then I'm just going to check out.
And that extraterrestrials are involved in, what are I even talking about? That's so far beyond. Yeah. I mean, you may as well just go to work every day and shut up.
Right. Yeah.
I think more than likely that money is used for something much more pedestrian than another society underground with extraterrestrial aliens.
Yeah.
More than likely black ops, military technology, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, it gets so complicated so quick. It's like you can't pin things down to one motive or one narrative. It's multifaceted, as I believe many things in this world are. Us, you guys doing this donut hole show, you understand and you see it like a lot of Americans do that don't have a loud voice, that things are left and right. Things are up and down. They're not black and white. There's a large middle ground, and only from that vantage point do I think you can start to get a healthy grounding in what's really going on.
Mm-hmm. And even if you don't agree with the other side of any argument, you still listen to it. You still acknowledge that it exists. You don't just put your blinders on.
Right, yeah. You develop a sense of processing information to where you can, toss things out or set them to the side for later because you're not sure yet. Mm-hmm. You don't reject anything out of hand necessarily unless it's Hillary Clinton eats dead babies. That's a little bit of a stretch. I mean,
I'm going to set that one aside.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's that. So we talked about the Pentagon aspect. What about the actual towers themselves? Because I noticed there were some interesting bits. Obviously, both the towers were hit by planes, which we've seen video footage of that. We did see something that looked like a plane slam into the building on those. They happen on live TV. So, I mean, there's only so much foolery. That was used different.
Right.
That could be interjected with that. So, but on the flip side of that, you have something like Tower 7, which collapses from residue, and then when you look at some of the rebel leftover, you got diagonal cuts, which seems a little suspect.
And yes, that's a contentious thing because some people say, well, that was the demolition crews that were torching things so they could get stuff out. But if you there was 110 stories of debris. Mm-hmm. Have you seen the video of George Stephanopoulos having to respond to the question by Tom Cronkite, I think, maybe? Where he said, hey, this was the day after, and they were like, there appears to be 1 to 2 stories of debris And he asked George Stephanopoulos, because he was on location, he said, where did all the debris go? And he says, well, that's a good question. I asked some people, and they said basically that the towers fell down and they went down into the sub-basements and got pulverized and then evaporated. That was what was said on live TV by George Stephanopoulos. And there's large inconsistencies all around what happened in 9/11. It's a very complicated thing, and we could do this podcast for 2 days and still not cover all of the intricacies of what happened. But one thing that I think that you guys may or may not be aware of is that right now, this is January 20th, the Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth organization got together with a group of lawyers called Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry, and they filed a petition / legal submission to the Southern District of New York for a federal grand jury to investigate 9/11, which has been granted. They have granted a grand jury to investigate the happenings of what went on in 9/11. They have 51 or 57 pieces of scientific evidence to prove their case that when the way that the towers went down was in fact not because of the planes. And their position is that there was thermite used, which is contentious amongst the conspiracy world, but it's a success nonetheless. The fact that they compelled the court to convene a grand jury to investigate what's actually going to happen, and you don't hear about that on the news.
Yeah,
that is a huge deal in my opinion.
Right.
And I haven't heard a single peep about it on the news. Not one peep.
No, the news is obsessed with who's using what bathroom.
Yeah.
And,
who's using what bathroom, and the fact that Trump has shut down the government, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Single-handedly.
Maybe that's got something to do with it, because that's a federal grand jury. Maybe they're not convening right now. That's just being speculative.
Yeah, and the media has just, to me, here in the last 10, 15 years, just become more complicit in the government's agenda. And I don't know if that's even, like you said, I don't even know if that's direct, a bunch of shady guys getting together and say this. It's just the people who get those jobs come from the same areas. They're part of the elite. They're part of the Beltway. They all are taught the same way at the same universities, and they all just parrot each other. So, when we talk about something like getting truth from 9/11, well, you have a bunch of all the same people telling the American people the same thing.
If it's not profitable, you're not going to get it.
Yeah. And then you have, alternative journalists who are just called insane, or, say a foreign source like RT, oh, well, that's Russian, and everything Russian is bad now, So it's very hard to get any other narrative than that mainstream Beltway narrative. And I don't, once again, not necessarily a conspiracy, more so just a product of nepotism. As simple as that.
Well, it's kind of ironic bringing up American media. I believe it was in 2015, thereabouts. There was a law that expired on the books that actually that then began to allow American media outlets to legally produce American propaganda for the U.S. consumption. So anything that's on the media now is officially propaganda. Legally propaganda. They did it before in the past, but it was to a much lesser degree.
Yeah.
It was under the cover via the machinations of Project Mockingbird, which, anyone that's put their toes in the conspiracy waters should be aware of that. And it's just, it's everywhere, man.
Yeah. Well, it's, it also even goes back to the theory that, and this is a wild one, but I like to mull it over in my head, is that Germany lost World War II, but did the Nazis? With Operation Paperclip and bringing all the scientists here and the influence, and things started to change, and we're turning more towards a Goebbels-like media. I know it's just far-fetched, but it's just an idea. It's a speculation to throw out.
Well, but you bring that up, and I believe one of our next topics it leads us very well into that.
Yeah, I believe so. But actually, we're going to go take a quick commercial break and get back to our sponsors.
All right.
And if there's any content that you'd like to see in the future, please reach out to us. We'd love to know what your thoughts are on the program, what you'd like to see, what you don't like, and try to create a show that not only we enjoy, but you guys enjoy as well.
And the more money you give us, the more we will like you.
Alrighty, we're back from the last little commercial break. So I think we're about to leave off. We were about to go ahead and start talking about the moon landings.
Yes, we left off talking about
Nazi scientists.
the Project Paperclip and leading into that. Yes, there's a common thread there, isn't there? So, as you guys have intimated and led up to, that I am the proverbial moon landing denier, as it were. But as with most things, it's a little bit more nuanced than that. I'm not a flat earther.
Thank God.
Let's please get that on the table and declare that. 2, I do believe that we have the possibility and the technology to travel throughout our solar system and explore space. But 3, I don't think that we did it as we were told in 1969 in the Apollo missions. Do I believe that it was possible back then? Yes. Do I believe that we could have even done it? Yes. But do I believe that what we saw on TV was true? No.
Okay. I'm gonna kind of always, I guess, bought the narrative that we've landed on the moon. So I'm gonna have to ask you to elaborate a little more on that because I'm.
Okay, so because I've went to YouTube University, I know all things. No, I don't. But I when I see evidence that's clear and evident, I have to acknowledge it. And so I have to lead out with the work of a guy by the name of Bart Sabrell. He made a documentary called "Something Funny Happened on the Way to the Moon," and he introduced himself to the people at NASA, and they allowed him. He told them that he was making a movie documentary about going to the moon. Gave them no intimation that he had some doubts on whether or not that they had actually done it. So they were kind of like, okay, yeah. And so they let him peruse their video archives, and he actually claims that he found a video that was like not for public view, and then incorporated that into his documentary. And it's a clear as day video of when they were shooting in the orbiter around the Earth, or whatever, their spaceship, whatever, not the lunar lander, but the big one. And yeah, so the shot is where it looks like they're looking at a half crescent of Earth from halfway in between Earth and the moon. And they're talking and they're saying, yes, it looks so pretty. And then fast forward a number of minutes, and then they turn the cab lights on in the space station. And you see that they're standing at the very rear of the space station, shooting through the window and using the curve of the window to make it look like they're really far away from the Earth. But in fact, they're not. They're actually still just right there low Earth or orbit. And they're faking the shot. And I don't care what the conclusions you want to draw from that. That is a fake. It's just one little chink in the armor of the story. Now, I don't think it's fair to take that one piece of evidence and say it's all fake. But if you want to keep going, we can talk about other things that might be fake.
Well, I watched that video, and the video of what you're saying is true. I saw the video. However, the context, there was nothing in the video that led me to believe the context was the same as what the documentarian was describing.
He did embellish upon it. I'll give you that, yeah. And that's why I say you can't use that one singular piece of evidence to draw the grand conclusion that they didn't go to the moon and that it was all fake. You could, but I don't think it's fair.
Yeah, because he kind of sold it as a smoking gun. And now, yes, it was a new piece of video. However, there was nobody in the video stating... none of the astronauts said, "Oh, look how far away we are from Earth." There was no specific statement that was made that they were trying to fake a shot. Mm-hmm. Now, it looks like one thing, but, it's one of those things that's still very up in the air to me. Because I'm like, well, without further context, you can't, I can't make a judgment on that.
I will say this before we get too much further into talking about it, is that, yes, I do have the opinion that the video and the pictures and everything that we have that we can look back upon that are evidence of moon landings, I do believe that a large majority, if not all of those, are to some degree faked or doctored or etc. I'm also cognizant and aware that my opinion on the matter, one, doesn't matter, and that the history books are never going to change. Mm-hmm. Whether I'm right or wrong, I don't think it really matters in the long grand scheme of things, but I will not just take it, as is. I just can't. Objectively, I was telling you, I've listened to world-renowned professional photographers that looked over all of the pictures that were sent back from the astronauts, and that they scientifically broke down that you can't have diffuse shadow lines from a light point source that's 2.5 million miles away or whatever. That's just not possible. That has to be a close-up light source because light will tend to wrap around a subject, as it did in the pictures that they had, with their no viewfinder, chest-held, perfectly framed video or photos that they had.
The question is that because some of that diffuse light have come from landing lights on a lunar module or something like that too.
Yes, I mean it's much more complicated than that. But the more that you look into it, the more that you're like, whoa, no way, I have a lot of different opinions on a lot of different matters of it, but you guys have talked about it before. I mean, do you have any doubts about it?
I kind of don't really, for the most part. Maybe perhaps I'm just not as well versed into the conspiracy aspects of it. I kind of perhaps we're maybe a little bit more dismissal of it. It's like who went to the moon,
Right.
Perhaps
and like I said, I don't think that the history books will ever change. I mean, fair enough. But another problem that I have is with the Van Allen radiation belts. Mm-hmm. How did they get through those? Why did they tell us that they went through those and it wasn't that radiation, blah, 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 blah. There wasn't that much radiation. But then why did NASA say themselves that the telemetry trajectory recording data that they had, they deleted and recorded over?
That, I will give you, that does seem a little suspect.
I mean...
Well, but there's also multiple suspect things about the lunar program that don't necessarily say we didn't land on the moon. Like for example, the Saturn V rocket plans were destroyed. Well, we know the Saturn V is a real rocket.
Right.
I mean, people saw it go. I mean, the public went and saw it go up. Mm-hmm. Why was that plan destroyed? It makes no sense at all to me.
Yeah.
And that is, once again, that's a discrepancy. Does it lead me to believe we didn't land on the moon? No, absolutely not.
I think that leads more to gross government incompetence.
But if I'm being fair with myself, I don't trust the government to do anything, so why should I trust them to perfectly handle the most precious documents of human history? Maybe I got a double standard there, but I still have a lot of doubts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But with that, I mean, like I said, I think with the Saturn V rocket, I think that's just gross government incompetence, which we do see on a regular basis. But we know that people have been in space. I mean, that's a given as well.
Yeah, hands down. Yeah.
People
made it through the firmament.
Yeah, I think to Ben Allen's aside
through the dome.
Yeah. Aside from obviously, I think we made it through the Van Allen radiation belt. I mean, clearly, this goes into a bit more conspiratorial things. But I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with some of the lost Russian recordings of some of the earlier cosmonauts before Yuri Gagarin who went into space and were basically died.
Yeah, and if I'm correct, the reason was because they had no magnetic field around them, mm-hmm. and they discovered that whilst we're down here on Earth, we're shielded by a magnetic field, which mm-hmm. also temperaments our biomagnetic field, mm-hmm. and so they, at some point or another, discovered that hey, we need to produce a magnetic field around this craft. And that, in and of itself, if strong enough, would deflect that radiation. Mm-hmm. But NASA never told us that they did that, as far as I'm aware. Maybe it's buried in some deep paper that only the nerdiest of the nerds has read and found mm-hmm. out, and they're not on the microphone telling everybody about it, which is fair enough. But, surely to God, one person from NASA could be like, hey, conspiracy theories, we had a magnetic field, that's how we got through it. Yeah. If they said that, I'd probably start leaning a bit towards, okay, they weren't lying. But then I got to look at the video of them taking off from their lunar lander, and they got their remote-controlled video camera that watches the little burst of their bottle rocket engines, and then it goes up, and then the camera follows it just perfectly. Mm-hmm. Like they had a GPS GoPro follow camera in 1969, that perfect. It's like I was saying earlier about us not seeing the video mm-hmm. of the plane hitting the Pentagon. The fact that we have no video and people still say, oh, a plane hit the Pentagon, I consider them Stockholm Syndrome. In the same way that if you can look at that video and say, yes, that's genuine, that you do have a degree of Stockholm Syndrome, because that is clearly not real.
But and what I would say to counter some of these arguments of we didn't go to the moon, do you think that many people could have been sent to the moon? It's what, a dozen people or so? And every single one of them lie about it till their deathbed. Not one person has come forward.
That's the best argument ever. And it's such a solid one.
And that's why I make that argument.
It's a solid argument.
When it comes down to alien conspiracies, there are generals in the Air Force that come forward and talk about aliens on their deathbed. There's so many of these other people that are whistleblowers on their deathbed for wilder things than the moon landing.
Right.
But yet the moon landing, we haven't had one.
And Russia hasn't said, they faked it.
Right.
So,
we have not had
so
one
if
person.
I'm going to uphold my position, I have to address that. And part of what I've come to perhaps propose or theorize is that the reason that they've covered it up and that it stayed covered up is not just because we didn't go. And again, like I said, I think that we did have the capability to go, but what we were shown on TV is fake. That I'm fully capable of believing that we did go.
That I would be more inclined to believe that perhaps we went,
but we don't have any video record of it in my opinion.
And that
we
gets
just
into
faked it for TV. That might be a little bit more plausible in my opinion.
And that gets into a whole other realm of people who believe that, and then of course they go into crazy.
Because on one hand you've got flat earthers in the dome and space is fake, and then on one hand you've got it's exactly as the government said. And again, in keeping with the donut hole, I'm pretty sure that the truth is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, and I can feel you on that. That's a bit more plausible, I suppose. In the grand scheme of things, that some of the video footage was done on a film set for public consumption, but we still went. Mm-hmm. Because we know full and well the Soviet Union was also working on a lunar lander as well during the same time. So, and like Jason brought up, nobody's said, okay, we really did do this.
Right.
So, those things together, it's like...
In my opinion, it's because there is something about space that they don't want us to know.
Yeah.
And take that for what you want to take it. You can think aliens, you can think demons, whatever you want to think. There's just something that they don't want us to know. And it's not that they don't want you to know, or they don't want you to know, or me to know. It's they don't want the general population to be aware of the intricacies of everything that's around us, because that's a matter of national security. If we knew everything, everyone would know everything, and Russia and China and everybody would know everything, and then it'd be a level playing field, and no military would have an advantage if we all knew the truth. If you know the truth about space and everything, blah, 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 and your competitors or your enemies don't, you have an advantage, and it's in your best interest to maintain that advantage
But
militarily.
on the flip side, I mean, the Russians already know about space, the Chinese know about space, the Europeans know about space, the Indians know about space.
It's a space race. We just announced our Space Force, didn't we? Yeah.
Well, Space Force.
Yeah.
Which we've had going for many years. The U.S. And a lot of people don't realize that the U.S. Air Force has been sending up space planes. I mean, gosh, they brought one down a couple of years ago. Been up there 6 years or something, an automated craft. And it was a U.S. Air Force space plane. And common people are not aware of that. And, the U.S. Air Force has really taken that role seriously. And they've done the satellites and the space planes. And,
Virgin Mobile just had their first commercial airliner go into space.
Yeah.
With passengers.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about the To the Stars Academy with Tom DeLonge and some of his disclosures that they've managed to bring out about the TR-3B and then the Tic Tac UFO video, and then revealing that the Air Force did have a program for 12 years that ended, I think, in 2014 studying UFOs. Mm-hmm. That officially, before that disclosure, they were officially, there's no such thing as UFOs. We don't care. They're blah 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 blah. And then it came out, oh, okay, we did care. We spent a lot of money. Blah blah blah. What do you think about that?
Figures.
The figures, right?
Yeah. I mean, we saw the same kind of thing. We've had the United States government, deny when it comes to these things. But you've got first-hand accounts of various Air Force and Navy pilots that have seen things. And then in 1991, obviously with the fall of the Soviet Union, the KGB blue files were declassified. So all that was out there. So I mean, the whole UFO thing, it's like there it is, black and white, and there's no hiding it.
Right. There's, in my opinion, there's undeniably a phenomenon, but it's so obfuscated that you can only recognize it as a phenomenon. We'll never. I don't want to say never. But as of right now, we just can't get down to the details because we don't have them. We can only speculate.
And I've also heard the theory that the U.S. government wants you to believe that UFOs are aliens. Mm-hmm. And that's just a great cover story. It's fantastical. It gets, headlines, and it just leads everybody to kind of buy into it when it could be a completely different phenomenon, could be a government-controlled phenomenon, could be simply a secret, aircraft. You don't know.
We don't, and without a top secret clearance level, we probably won't.
All right, let's keep moving things along, I guess. A little bit of moonlighting stuff there. Let's go with this electric universe theory stuff that you're talking about. I'm not very well versed in this at all. So
Okay, so I'll try to do it justice. So the basic premise of the electric universe theory is that on our cosmological scale, and as a tenet of cosmology, that the electric force is the overarching and organizing factor in the stars and galaxies in the universe, above and beyond the force of gravity. And so they've made some discoveries. There was a guy by the name of Christian Birkeland who discovered that the northern lights were actually a column of electric discharge coming down into the pole of the Earth. And he was ridiculed in his day, but then decades later, they were like, oh, crap, he was right. There is electric charge. It's not just a vacuum of things bumping into each other. There actually is an organizing force, which is the electromagnetic force. So if the force of gravity is one, the force of the electromagnetic force is 10 to the 36 times to the 1 of gravity. That's how much more powerful the electromagnetic force is. And so the electric universe theory explores the possibility that if that is the case, then they make predictions, and they've made successful predictions about how projectiles that are impacted with comets would act. There's actually a thread of the community of the electric universe theory that has developed a model to where they can successfully predict earthquakes to a degree. In the realm of 7.0 magnitude and above, they're somewhere around 70 to 80% right now and getting better. There's obviously more to be learned, but it's very, in my opinion, it's the future of science. And I think it's going to change the future of humanity for the long term. They obviously see Nikola Tesla as somewhat of a cult hero, somewhat of a groundbreaker. But if you look back and you think about the things that Tesla said, it translates very well into what Tesla said, one day mankind would tap the breast of Mother Sun to power our machinery here on Earth. And I think that's very possible, and very likely that we can. We just have to kind of evolve our paradigm and move forward with new science. And it even extends into biology. Robert Becker wrote a book called The Body Electric, where he proved that frogs and reptiles can regrow their limbs. Human beings can't, right? Mm-hmm. Well, he showed that it was because they had a neural network within their bodies that allowed them to send a certain charge and then build a blast steam, I believe they called it. And it was basically an electric charge ball that would organize material to just basically 3D print a new leg or tail. And recently there's been some TED Talks in the past couple of years where scientists are starting to discover where they can take electrical charge at certain frequencies for amputee patients, and then kind of slice them off at the end and put a little special serum on there, and then put some certain electrical frequencies on there, and then it charges the body and tells it to start growing new limbs. And that's thanks to understanding the electrical nature of all things around us.
What was the medium they used? It was like pig bladder powder, I believe.
I don't know.
It's
base biological material.
Yeah,
I think it'd be probably much more efficient.
It was just a matrix that they used.
Yeah, if they were able to use stem cells freely, it would probably be like way better.
Yeah, but I remember watching a documentary about that where it was some pig part. I want to say bladder, just powdered, and they would just, because it's like you said, it was just base building block material, and it allowed the human flesh to grow onto it.
Yeah. It's a very fascinating theory. So what really got me into it is I'm an electrician by trade, and when I was in school, we were taught that the Earth's magnetic field we were taught first that magnetism, we had to learn about electricity and magnetism to understand electricity, that you cannot have a magnet. If you take just the best magnet in the world, but you heat it to the point that it's molten, it will no longer have any magnetism. And yet we're taught in school that the core of the Earth is a spinning ball of molten metal.
Mhm.
So how does it have magnetism? Well, the standard theory says that there's a certain dynamo, and because it's spinning, the charge is moved around and blah, 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 blah. But the fact of the matter is that you cannot have a magnetic field if it's molten. Just cannot. But you can if it's an electromagnet. If it's being fed by an electrical charge to regenerate and maintain that magnetic field, then yes, you theoretically can have a magnetic field with molten metal. But it has to have a high input of charge.
What's bringing the magnetic field in then? If it's not a base within the
So
center.
that would be the Birkeland currents that are proposed to be coming from the sun, and it's a lower order fractal of the galactic current that we're all flowing through. So for instance, dark matter. Why is dark matter a thing? Dark matter is a thing because they looked at how our galaxy spins like a plate. It spins all together. And they were like, well, even if there's this black hole at the middle, the center, organizing gravity that everything spins around, that still doesn't account for why it spins like a plate instead of like a bowl of water where you spin the center really fast and the outside spins slower. No, the whole thing spins like a saucer. And so they were like, well, there must be all this other matter that we can't see and can't detect that holds it all together like a plate. But if you take the electric universe theory's take on it, because it's being fed by an electrical force, and there's a plasmoid, they propose that there's a plasmoid in the center of the galaxy rather than a black hole. But that is basically the center focus of the grand arching electrical force that moves it like a homopolar motor, just like you could take a 1.5 volt battery and put a little wire around it, a little resistor, whatever, and then it spins just because it's receiving charge and there's charge there. And it's all based on long-standing Maxwell theories of electromagnetism. And Nobel Prize winners such as Hannes Elfing, he won a Nobel Prize because he proposed that in plasma that we see in space, there was frozen-in magnetic fields that allowed it to act the way that it did with matter. And when he accepted his Nobel Prize, he actually told the people that in his acceptance speech, I was wrong. They're not frozen in. They're being fed by electrical currents. Please, he's like, thank you for the prize and all, but I was wrong. Disregard what I said. Please move on. And they really kind of never did in the mainstream. But, and he's quite a, I guess you'd say a founding father of electric universe theory, but it's something that I highly suggest. There's a couple documentaries you can watch for free on YouTube, produced by the Thunderbolts Project, which is very, very enlightening. I highly suggest it. And it also gets into history and mythology too. There's a whole thread of that, but I think we should save that for probably another time.
Well, I was going to bring up the hollow Earth theory because you'd mentioned the molten core. So this is also used in the hollow Earth theory of saying that okay, well you can't have a magnetic field from a molten core. Well, so there you get into your hollow Earth guys. They say, well, the Earth's not molten at the core. It's solid and also has caves and entire hollowed out continents and whatnot underneath it, which I think is just completely kind of ridiculous.
What do they call that? Jules Verne stuff right there.
Yeah, what do they call it? It's got a name. It's like Lastarkia or something.
Yes, but it ties into that, because they use that same example of, you can't have a magnetic field because it's a solid bar of iron, and we've got a whole other underground civilization going on. And there's actually people that say that there's a parallel human race under there, and complete nonsense. But
and the reptilians.
That's where the reptilians and the reptilians come from, right?
Yeah, Nancy Pelosi is a reptile.
Alrighty. So let's, I guess, go ahead and take another quick little break, and we'll get back to you after that. And if there's any content that you'd like to see in the future, please reach out to us. We'd love to know what your thoughts are on the program, what you'd like to see, what you don't like, and try to create a show that not only we enjoy, but you guys enjoy as well.
And the more money you give us, the more we will like you.
And we're back. So I think we're going to go right back into some more of the conspiracy stuff. Let's go ahead and hit up a little bit on the Federal Reserve banking system, which I wouldn't really classify this much as a conspiracy theory, but it's just kind of a fact. Mm-hmm. So we all, everybody hears the word, Federal Reserve, they think, oh, it's the government.
It's federal.
Yeah, it's federal. I mean, it's in the name, right? And really the truth is it's a privately owned centralized bank, which controls the U.S. money supply. And
we don't know who owns it.
We don't know who owns it. We don't know anything really about it. It's really kind of shadowy.
We can't audit them.
Yeah. And then not only that, we moved off the gold standard and money no longer has any value. Mm-hmm. So it's just gotten all kinds of fun.
Well, I was actually talking to my banker about this the other day, not about the Federal Reserve, but just about how money works. Mm-hmm. And we discussed the concept of, a dollar gets taxed every time it changes hands. It has to lose, just mathematically, it has to lose 90% of its value after it changes hands 5, 6, 7 times, however many times it was. Mm-hmm. You add on top of that fractional reserve banking. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept. It's basically saying, okay, we're going to loan out $1,000, but we only have $500 in reserve to actually guarantee the original depositor's $1,000. So say I deposited $1,000 in the bank. They will not have my $1,000. They only keep a fraction of it back because they loan the rest out. Well, then that guy who takes the loan deposits some of that in the bank, which is already a loan. Mm-hmm. And then they keep a fraction of that and loan that out. Then that next guy takes, and so on and so forth down the line. So ultimately, it's between taxes and fractional reserve banking, the dollar of the value just completely disappears. Mm-hmm. But yet it doesn't. So that's something I've struggled to understand.
Many would postulate that it's backed by oil hegemony or our military dominance or our physical input to the system. The dollar's backed by our actual labor. Basically, it's a note that our Social Security holding citizens will produce enough value to maintain this inflated system. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's kind of basically they just gain back most of the value of your labor.
It's all a scam. It's all a scam. It's all debt slavery. Really to put forth a term often used by the dollar vigilante and other podcaster type.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of time before the whole system comes crumbling down.
Well, see, and hearkening back to when I talked earlier about Catherine Austin Fitts and the missing trillions, mm-hmm. She goes on to a lot of programs such as the Dollar Vigilante and other podcasters, and they all say, when's the collapse coming? Because we've been hearing about that. If you put your toes in the conspiracy water, you've heard about it's all going to collapse, doom and gloom. And she's, in my opinion, much more of a pragmatist, mm-hmm. whereas she says it's collapsing now and has been collapsing for decades. It's a slow burn because they want to collapse it down to bring in their new system, mm-hmm. whatever that may be. But she makes a good case that the debasing of our currencies and the coming about of globalism is a very much orchestrated orchestra, in a way of saying, and that the Federal Reserve, they're not going to fall apart tomorrow. If it all collapses, then where did their power go?
Mm-hmm.
It's
You think it's more so to just, and I don't necessarily disagree with you, to shift it from one thing to the next, to maintain power and to, frankly, consolidate power. Mm-hmm. But I think you're probably right on that.
I think so if we're going to talk about the Federal Reserve, I'm sure we're all here very well aware of the name Rothschild.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I believe it was Mayor Amschel Rothschild that said, give me the ability to control the money of a country, and I care not who makes its laws.
Yeah. Something of that degree.
I couldn't put it any better. I mean, if you look at our current situation, there you go.
There was even a story of the Rothschild's bankers in England when Napoleon was fighting his wars, and they would have scouts on the battlefield. And, of course, back in the day before electronic communications, everything had to go manually. Well, the banks would send scouts into the battlefield, and when they pretty much predicted the outcome, they would ride as fast as they could and go to London and tell the Rothschilds what the outcome was, and they would bet on it in the stock market and win big. Mm-hmm. They basically invented funding both sides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely a fact. And I know there's also instances where they would get their scouts in, learn the truth, and then report the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a little insider trading.
Insider trading?
Before insider trading was a crime,
Yeah.
they were really big proponents of that, and I know that was definitely a thing that was done. So, yeah. Fun times.
Well, which is, that's why you look at the Muslim culture, and they consider any loan that draws interest usury. They believe in no interest at all. If you're going to give a loan, it's done as a favor. And that's why. Because they saw what can come of that.
How does that work so much for their big finance centers like Abu Dhabi and Dubai?
Oh, there's still interest rates, obviously. But that it's not one of those tenets they follow strictly, obviously, because otherwise they couldn't be involved in international finance. But it is a tenet that a lot of
They just like being rich.
the poorer folks and whatnot, well, they believe that's usury if you charge interest on a loan. But it is enshrined in their religion.
I guess it's kind of a positive pillar of Islam.
It is. It's just one of those things they don't follow. I mean, just like any religion, there's many things they don't follow.
What do y'all think about the idea that cryptocurrency is the savior to...
Cryptocurrency, I think, is the savior and the demise. Because while on one side, you have like Bitcoin, which Bitcoin's been cracked. It's no longer the greatness that it could be, and its architecture is not very good. If you actually look at it long term. And now it's taking so long to process a transaction. It's virtually worthless.
It takes more electrical energy to process one, yeah.
Yeah, it's seemingly worthless in the long run, but it was a great proof of concept. And you've got other altcoins that have improved on its architecture, which show a lot of promise. You have ones like Ethereum, which look really good. And then for more on the privacy side, you have ones like Monero. Those are both really great, but on the flip side, you have ones that are playing ball with all the big finance companies, with all the big banks, like XRP, that are probably going to be the one that takes off, and probably the devil that kills us all, as far as consolidating power for people like the Federal Reserve. I think it's just a matter of time before XRP takes its place as like the global currency, if you will. Whereas I think there still always will be a market for something like Monero, which still holds a lot of those privacy bits in its architecture. That's my thought. I could be wrong.
Well, the conspiracy community is, in my opinion, divided about 50-50 on that matter of like, is cryptocurrency good or is it bad? And admittedly, a fair amount of them are willing to admit that it's both. That it could be steered one way or the other, which I think anything in existence is going to have a certain degree of good and bad. But as far as like the founding of the United States, it was designed so that two different left and right paradigms could argue it out and have a mediating factor by which to go forward in the future without total demise. And I think that architecture should be built into everything that we do. There should be an overarching cohesiveness to everything that allows everyone to participate, just like a donut.
My overall view of cryptocurrency is ultimately you can make it as complicated as you want, but if money can buy it, then the governments and the banks will buy it.
Yeah.
Simple as that. When they see the tide turning, they will just purchase more of it than you have, and then they will control it. That's why I never bought into the whole crypto anarchist thing, because I'm like, well, if you're wanting to exchange it for actual goods and services, you still have to do that, which means that the governments and the banks still control the flow of goods and services, ultimately in the end. I don't think that the large entities that control the economy are so stupid as to go, no, we're just not going to buy any of it and just let people do that. They'll just end up buying the majority of it, and that'll be bad.
But the thing with cryptocurrency is its production is not controlled by a central bank.
Yes.
So that part of it does lend itself more to the crypto anarchist kind of view of it. It's, there's only X amount of these things available. You can buy it with regular money, but there's what's there is what's there.
Right.
And since it's not being, currency is not being reissued out or doled out by a central bank, there is some level of freedom and autonomy within that isn't going to be able to be controlled by an outside force such as a central bank.
But there's still the overarching argument that it's not backed by a precious metal.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
that as well, but neither is the U.S. dollar.
Yeah.
It used to be, but not anymore.
Yeah. But my argument is if a U.S. dollar can simply purchase cryptocurrency, it doesn't matter how cryptocurrency is manufactured. They'll just manufacture more U.S. dollars to buy more.
It can be inflated
cryptocurrency.
very easily.
Yeah, at the same time, with that, the more money,
Speculators can
Right.
ruin it overnight.
Right.
yeah, speculators can ruin. We saw a big bump in Bitcoin when that happened, when a bunch of people jumped on the bandwagon and lost their ass because they got into the market without even really knowing what they're getting into. But on the flip side of that, the more money you produce against any currency, let's say we had to buy British pounds, well, you can only print U.S. dollars so many times, and then the next thing you know, you're coming up with a. Hang on, I'll be right back. You guys can type right there. You'll end up with something similar to this. Let's see if I can find one of these. I think I have one with me.
He's busting out the Japanese wallet. Or the Taiwanese wallet.
No, money from Indonesia. You'll end up with something like this: 100,000.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
Can I just put a dollar mark next to it and then go and buy a car?
right? So, to kind of give you an idea of what this spends like, this is about, I think, $7 or whatever. It took me 3 million rupiah to my car ride from Jakarta to the wedding.
Wow.
So, I mean, granted, I was in the car for a long time, but still.
3 million.
3 million, yeah.
I don't even think it costs you 3 million pennies to do that kind of a ride in the United States.
Yeah, so, I mean, the more money you print, the more you end up with something like this.
Sure.
Where it's like, oh, wow, what do you do with this? It was the most irritating thing. You go in to buy a soda or something like that at the convenience store, and, you get a price of, like, 18,000. I'm sitting here looking at all these different bills, like, the smallest one was, like, 1,000, so I'm like, here, just take 100,000, give me change.
Yeah,
it's just
yeah.
easier.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. And it's even worse in Vietnam because goes into the millions on the paper money. It's just like, oh, what do you do with this? Thankfully, it's not as bad as it was in Rhodesia, where they had like the $1 trillion.
Yeah.
The only plus side is if you take our money down to Mexico, we're millionaires.
Oh yeah. I exchanged like $300 at the airport, and I think I had like millions upon millions in my pocket. It was ridiculous.
Sweet.
I was it was funny because I was flying back through from Jakarta to KL, and I get to my flight was red eye early morning, got crack of dawn flight. So I think the flight left at like 4:30 in the morning. So I clear security because I wanted to make sure I got through that, and then there were no money exchanges open afterwards. I'm like,
Of course.
so I mean there was one open beforehand, but not after. So I was like, what am I gonna do? I'm like, I'll just change it when I get to KL. And I think I had 1.5 million left that I wanted to exchange. I wanted to keep a million just so I had a million later. And it's like, hey, I got a million later. That's great. A millionaire, But I went to KL, and then they were going to give me a crap exchange rate, so I ended up keeping it as well. So they wanted to change it from Indonesian rupiah to Malay ringgit, and then Malay ringgit to US dollar.
So they could siphon off some value.
Siphon off a lot more out of me. So what should have been like $120 ended up they wanted to give me like $80 for it. I'm like, go pound sand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just keep it and go on another trip to Indonesia at some point. Spend it when I go to Bali. So that's the plan. But yeah, that's what I was getting at with the printing money. Something like this. So, all right, let's keep moving along. I guess with it, let's talk a little bit about Las Vegas. Viva Las Vegas.
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 The Jack and the Ace.
Yeah, there's definitely some Jack going on there. Obviously, when we're talking about Vegas, we're referring to the shooting that happened.
The October, was it the 1st?
I don't remember the exact date.
I think it was 10/1.
Mhm.
The October Harvest Festival on Route 91.
Yeah,
And was it Jason Aldean that was the singer?
I believe so.
yeah, it was a country music concert.
He's an original here from Nashville. Actually, I used to work with some guys that they went to a big loft apartment or whatever downtown for a New Year's Eve party, and it was at one of the owners of an electrical supply house that supplied all the stuff to our company that we bought, blah, 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 blah. It's kind of like a thanks for spending money with his party, and he had the Jason Aldean Platinum signed albums on his wall. I got to asking him, what's that all about? And the owner of this electrical supply company was the guy that gave him his first loan to becoming a musician. and I didn't think any of it at the time. And still, I don't know what to think of it, or if there's anything to. But I found it interesting that his Jack of the Ace tattoo were the Illuminati cards, the Illuminati card game or whatever it is. That's what he had tattooed on his arm that day. Like
that might be reading into it a bit much. I don't know.
Well,
perhaps
the overarching narrative is because his name is Jason Aldean, J-A, Jack of the Ace, but it's also like Blackjack 21, but it's also the Illuminati cards. There's a lot of different ways you can tattoo your initials on your arm, but it almost begs the question, like, did someone tell him to get that tattoo and lead him into that so he could be like sucked into the middle of this conspiracy theory? You know, there's so much speculation.
Yeah,
there's so much speculation. But I don't think that the subject can be properly or fully approached unless you're familiar with the work of Jake Morphonios. And he did, I don't know, it was like a 30 or a 40-part series on all of the possible details that could be known about what went down. Again, it's one of those things that we could do numerous episodes just as he did on, but the conclusion is that there was some obvious fuckery going on there. You know?
Yeah, the most obvious to me was what stuck out in the actual sheriff's report that was released to the public was the lock logs did not have him going in that room at that time. They had him going in the adjoining room. However, if it was him by himself, he would not have been able to go in the adjoining room because that lock was locked after he was in the adjoining room. So somebody would have had to stay behind and lock that door. And this is not a conspiracy theory. This was by the sheriff's department. They said this. So that was very odd. And then the fact that the Australian guy who worked with his girlfriend, with the shooter's girlfriend in Australia, happened to be in the same hallway at the same time, and they let him go back to Australia without questioning. So things like that, like I'm not willing to draw any conclusions, but
it's almost the same as when the Saudis were allowed to leave the day after 9/11, even though all planes were grounded.
Yes. Yeah, it's very strange, some of these things.
Yeah, the official narrative is very suspect at the end of the day. There's a lot of things that don't seem to add up. You talked to a lot of people around the street, and some of the initial reports that came out. There was clearly people that were reporting multiple shots, multiple different shooters. There's the there was a like alleged note that was left on the table that was never talked about. If you actually look at some of the pictures, in some of the in some of the photos, some of the different bits just didn't seem to add up right. There would have been a lot more, like even with smokeless powder, there would have been more smoke in the room. Even when several hours later, there still would have been something in the air. There's so many things that just did not add up with that. And then you go into the fact that he was also allegedly some sort of military contractor as far as
affiliated. He was affiliated with what's their name? Not only Boeing, but also Lockheed Martin. He was like an acquisitions or something person affiliated, like an accountant with them. He was obviously on the periphery of the black budget military industrial complex, and there's no doubt about that. So it's like, he was very easily pointed out and painted as a patsy by the conspiracy crowd. But I'll go back to this though, and this seems to be a recurring theme. Just as we didn't see video of planes hitting the Pentagon, and I don't remember what the other one was, but we didn't see any video of him bringing all those guns up there. Why didn't we see that video? We know that it's there, But again, it's like if you think that okay, let's just buy the story and ignore the evidence that we don't have. No, we weren't given the video. It's a friggin' casino. It's a hotel. Even a Best Western has video of everything that goes on. They probably watch you masturbate in the bathroom. That's probably a bit of a stretch, but I'm saying.
But I mean, they watch you go into the lobby.
Yeah,
they go into
there's documentation of everything.
Yeah, the elevators. Yeah, everything. Yeah. Well, and also another odd thing was, first of all, the woman who was apparently standing up on the hay bales at the concert yelling at everybody, "You're all about to die." Mm-hmm. So that's, I mean, there's crazy people everywhere, but what a coincidence. Mm-hmm. And then you also have the casino was rushing out a Saudi VIP right before this happened, with multiple security agents around it. Mm-hmm. Now, if there was no security situation, from my understanding, I don't know, you work security, would they be in that formation so obviously bringing attention to the VIP?
No, generally speaking, if you're with a VIP and you're unless there's a really heavy security threat, you're still going to be in a formation of sorts. You're still going to be in a defensive formation, but you're not going to be on alert. Really not a good way to put that. You're going to be on alert, but it's not going to be heightened. Mm-hmm. Okay, so
it's not going to be fight or flight.
Yeah, exactly. It's the formation's going to be a little more open. You're going to have, it's going to be seemingly more casual because you're not wanting your VIP to feel too, I guess, frightened or off-put, so to speak. Because a lot of times with a VIP, you want them to be able to have a lot more free range of motion and what have you, and it's your job as part of the security detail to accommodate that. However, if things are in a dangerous situation, you're going to close in on the person on your package who you're protecting, and that's how that's going to work. So you're going to be right there on them. You're going to have people literally all around them.
Which, if you watch the video, that's what it was. It was just people completely surrounding the guy.
Yeah. So that's usually only done in a heightened security situation. Mm-hmm. So that's how that is. I know when I've done security details for VIPs, if there was a security threat, that's exactly how it is. It's right in tight, as opposed to being out a little looser. Mm-hmm. So
I'm glad that you wanted to talk about Vegas because just keeping my thumb on the conspiracy community, people aren't really talking about it. It's kind of just come and it's gone, and as with most things. But one thing again, in keeping with the pattern of the things we've been talking about throughout the night, there seems to be two overarching narratives. One is what we're told, there was a lone gunman, and blah, 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 blah. And then the polar opposite is that it was Israeli secret intelligence combined with millionaires and nobody died. And both of those are totally freaking ludicrous.
Right.
Again, the truth is somewhere in the middle. Like, yes, people died. It was a
tragedy.
You just can't pull that kind of thing off and have that many people get hurt and it just be a total hoax. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
But I find it curious that each point that we've hit on tonight, there seems to be a space in the middle for reason. Mm-hmm. And in the overarching mediascape, you don't find a lot of places where you can objectively and or subjectively pontificate upon what's in the middle, like looking at things from a broad perspective. And that's why I appreciate you guys and what y'all are trying to do here. And I want to thank you for having me here tonight to really kind of dig down into the middle of things and scoop out the middle of that donut hole. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for coming.
Yeah. Definitely breaks up the monotony of just Jason and I all the time. Not that that's always not saying it's bad or anything, but fresh perspective is always nice and kind of changes things up a little bit. So we're glad you decided to come along for today.
Well, it was my pleasure for sure.
So
next time, can we talk about reptilian aliens and butthole?
We've already talked about Nancy Pelosi. So there's your reptilian alien. No, the butthole probes. That's another story.
Yeah. You want to hear a funny story?
We can bring Colby out for that one.
So I have at home. I have a sweatshirt. It's got a big green alien face on it, and it says, "I want to leave." Right, and I'm wearing it, and it was a day off, and I had my daughter with me, and I'm using the bathroom, and she's like, Daddy, you got a monster on your shirt. And I'm like, yeah, it's a monster. She's like, those are the ones that came and got me last night. And I was like, what? She's 4. And she's like, yeah, they came and got me last night. And they took me, and then we did this. I couldn't, inaudible. And then I was like, oh no. I need to take the shirt off, you know? Maybe there's some underlying psychological issues with all human beings there, but it's like...
Oh, it's so funny you mentioned that. I was installing a garbage disposal for a guy. It was my brother's boss, and his kid was there, and he left me there with the kid while they went to the store to choose a new garbage disposal. Well, the kid starts telling me similar stories. I know this is like a whole nother episode, but like he's like, you want to know what's really creepy? He's like, and I mean, this kid's maybe like 5. And he's like, I had to hide in the living room the other day because they were looking in the window. And, you know, he's saying stuff like this, and I'm thinking, like, you know, kid, I don't even want to hear any of this. You know, like, whatever he's
I think kids
about.
are tuned in, man. My daughter, I came home one day, we were getting settled, and I'm using the bathroom, and I'm looking out the window, and I swear I saw something walking through the bushes, but I was like, what is that thing? You know, and I couldn't see it anymore. And then out of nowhere, she comes in there and she says, Daddy, I saw something in the bushes. And I was like, oh, I'm going crazy. You know?
Yeah, mine are going to be getting to that age here pretty soon. I'm going to start telling them crazy stuff and then
Yeah.
freak out.
Then you got to question your reality.
Certainly kids and animals can tend to sense things we can't.
Yeah.
Well, let's wrap it up with talking a little bit about MK Ultra. With a lot of these conspiracy theories that been left to be unproven, you know, they're kind of hanging out there, if you will. No definitive answer one way or the other. But then there's something like MK Ultra, which for the longest time is a conspiracy theory, just like the Gulf of Tonkin, right? Conspiracy theory. And then, come to find, both those things pretty much...
It's documented fact.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now it's a documented fact.
Which is a hard thing to grasp.
Yeah. You know, everybody laughs off, oh, these were during the time, oh, MK Ultra, you know, the CIA mind control experiments, oh, that's just conspiracy garbage. And then, oh, well, here's all the documentation. Boom. This is what happened.
What's her name that wrote the book Transformation of America?
Not familiar.
No.
Maybe put a piece in the show notes after I can't remember her name, but
What was the name of the book again?
Trance, Formation of America. She wrote a detailed account of her experience with MK Ultra and how someone recognized that she was kind of in that program and kind of pulled her out of it, and then became her husband.
Mm-hmm.
And she was intimately involved, according to her story, with the Clintons, Mena, Arkansas.
Okay.
You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about now.
And, you know, it's hard for people to swallow that pill.
Mm-hmm.
If that's true.
Well, you know the things we already know that are true. Like, you're just a regular CIA desk worker. You go in and drink your coffee. You're tripping balls. You know, I mean, these are real documented things. You know, like guys running out in the street losing their mind because they're just, you know, some office guy, hey, honey, I'll be home for dinner. And, you know, next thing you know, he's taking, you know, a double dose of acid in his coffee. And these things are documented truth. And because it happened so long ago, I know people have a tendency to say, oh, well, that was back then. You know, things nowadays are much more above board. I know that's a human tendency to think, oh, the past, you know, that was really loosey-goosey. But now, we've got everything down now. You know, it could be happening now.
Well, that's the same thing you hear all of it. There's always that normalcy bias, I think is what they call it, where, you know, like you said, back then people would say the same thing. Oh, things are all, you know, on board now. It's all up in the way, and obviously it wasn't. And people will say the same thing now. And it's the same thing people will say, you know, when it comes politically with the United States, we'll say things like, oh, this is America. It can never happen here. I mean, riots in the streets, people starving, oh, that'll never happen in America. We're America for
We're the pinnacle of civilization.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is America. This could never happen here. You know, tyranny, this is America. The land of the free, for crying out loud. That'll never happen here. I mean, the government, you know, rounding people up or doing this, that, and the other. Posh.
When in reality, I would argue that it's always been there. But
yeah,
it's never been in our faces. And I think in our new technological age of being able to communicate, everyone can, you know, produce any kind of content for the world to see. And so there's a hyper communication, and we're exposed to more dark and light aspects of modern society. And because of that, we get to find out about things about MK Ultra, and we get to find out about things that are, you know, disturbing and or hard to believe. But, you know, I think that someone coming from a middle ground perspective with an open mind is almost the only type of person that's going to be able to say, okay, yes, there's something to that. I'm not going to dismiss it. I'm not going to turn around and scream it to the world and try to get the world to change, because I have to recognize that if that exists, that it's probably been a part of existence in some form or another for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So what good does it do me to try to tell the sheeple that it exists? And go ahead.
Yeah, well, that's the whole problem with the whole donut hole concept, is that most people, they don't listen to people because they want the truth. They listen because they want facts, they want to be reassured, and you see that on the conspiracy side as well as the quote-unquote toe-the-line government side.
Yeah.
Like I personally believe about 9/11. Yeah, there's a lot of inconsistencies, but I'm not going to go so far as to say, like, oh, it was an Israeli plot or, Dick Cheney. And people don't like that. Your common folks out there don't like the fact that, like, hey, we're bringing up inconsistencies. If you do the jobs, everybody's worked these jobs where you say, well, this is the problem, that's the problem. And then they say, well, what's your solution? So, well, I don't have one, but I want to bring to everybody's attention that there's a problem. Then they just completely dismiss you.
Right. That's points of discussion that need to be
brought
up.
You are expected to have the answer before you bring the points of discussion up.
Mm-hmm.
And in my view, the points of discussion are how we get to the answer. Mm-hmm. Whereas most people don't see it that way.
Which I believe that's how our government was formed, was to allow conversation initially with the checks and balance system and the houses of government. But it's devolved a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, to say the least.
Yeah.
And the other thing too, with the fact that while everybody can produce content these days, I find that we're in this age where we have all this information at our fingertips. There seems to be almost a media saturation or an information saturation, because you can be we're in a position now where we have so much knowledge at our fingertips that people are kind of, relatively stupid.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to put it that way, but it's the truth. I mean, you ask somebody a simple question, and it's questions that, all of us...
Yeah, we've all seen the microphone on the street saying, where is Nicaragua?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Point to me on a map.
Oh, yeah. I was actually watching one of those the other day. It was just name a country on the map and point to it, and nobody got it. It was like, oh, wow. Like, somebody pointed at Alaska and thought it was Greenland. It was like, Jesus Christ.
And I hear that argument. Well, they edit those videos.
I'm sure they
choose the worst people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm sure they do, but the fact that anybody like that exists is really bad.
I mean, you can't even point out the country you live in? I mean...
Yeah, that's a problem.
I mean, good God.
I'll save it for later.
Well, I think it just comes down to a little bit of knowledge is a terrible thing. And Americans now are getting... So they get this slight education in something, so they start believing in a governmental policy or what have you, or even, talking to my brother about working in restaurants that think they know so much about wine because they know this much. Well, it was better when they knew nothing. Because when they knew nothing, you trusted the expert, you trusted the guy who's like, okay, I'm going to guide you to the good wine. Instead, they think they know more than they really know. And then they just stop. They learn 10%, and they stop, and they say, okay, I made up my mind. And that's what's very dangerous to me about the internet and the big flow of information. People can't be bothered to dig deeper. They learn the surface, that's it. They make up their mind, they're done.
I can relate to that as an electrician. An apprentice can learn how to work with electricity, but they don't know it all yet. And they know just enough to be dangerous, to go do some work on the side for themselves and then spark some people's houses on fire. And you really need to know the whole gamut in order to swim in the electrical ocean without getting stuck. You were going to say?
Nah, I think I lost my train of thought, but...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, pretty much.
I agree with you. You can know enough to be dangerous.
Yeah.
You can't know it all, but you can know not enough, I guess is the right way to put it.
Too much, but not enough at the same time.
Yeah, though this is the point I was going to bring up. It's the fact that with that, a lot of times people learn the 10%, it's the 10% that's the media narrative, so to speak. And that's it's like, oh, well, this is what I heard on TV, so it's nice.
Yeah, for me particularly, lately, it's we hear about all the social conflict, and it's really all about the conflict of the like less than 5% of the population. And then there's no like there's no bullshitting that. I'm
Yeah.
serious. It's everybody's up in arms about like this small fraction that the media wants us to be upset about, and it's hard to disassociate yourself from that and find peace when we live in this age where everything's in your face all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine it's a lot easier for people that got a pasture full of cows and a bunch of pigs and they're just farming the land and living their lives, and they're not paying attention to all the insanity that's going on, because there is a lot of insanity that's going on. You know, I'm jealous of them to a degree, to be honest.
Oh yeah, I am too.
There's a certain level of simplicity with things.
Mm-hmm.
And that was some of the things too I really liked about when I was living overseas, is I really didn't have to pay attention. I didn't really, I still followed current events enough to kind of understand where I was and everything, but it wasn't like I was following things, like I do when I'm living here. And there was a freedom and a liberation to that. It's like, I don't have to deal with the United States.
Right.
BS.
Yeah.
And,
You're out of the shit show.
yeah, I kind of was, and then I came right back into it.
Yeah.
Literally right as it was taken off again. So, yeah.
I have some internet friends from other countries, and I pay attention to the way that they see what's going on here, and the only perspective they see is literally the media. That's the shell of America can only be, it can't be penetrated from the outside without being here. The only vision you're going to see of it is what's painted for you.
Oh yeah,
in the other countries.
This is something on my last trip. I was talking with a buddy of mine, guy I met there. He was from the UK, and we were actually talking about both British and American politics, and kind of doing like a little cross-cultural exchange of politics, which was actually quite enjoyable, getting different perspectives on things. That was fun. Maybe we'll go into the next episode. So, but yeah, it's definitely interesting, because he would have one preconceived notion about life in the US, and I would have preconceived notions about things in the UK, especially with Brexit recently being in the news, talking about that. So yeah, it was good. Good. Very interesting.
And all that tea they drink.
You know what we do with that shit? We throw it in the ocean.
That's right. Down with the OT.
And what was that, like a 1% tax or something like that?
Yeah, something 1 or 2%.
Like minuscule. Yeah.
And now we're just, you got the, this young radical wing of the Democrat Party talking about 70% tax rates for people making $250,000 and above, and it's like, well,
there you go.
Yeah, we'll start a revolution over 2%, but now 70%. Just steal other people's money.
Yeah, that sounds good. Taxation is theft.
Give me liberty or give me someone else's tax money.
Well, there's an ethicist who actually came out, and I mean, it's perfectly rational, but I mean, a child would understand it. Is if I steal from you to give to Paul, everybody in society would say that's theft.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, if, say, the Davidson County government came and stole from all three of us to give to some person downtown we don't know, well, that's taxation.
That's a whole nother
That's a whole nother show.
That's
a whole other can of worms.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've actually run over a little bit on time, so I think we're going to have to end it there. So, Will, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Thanks.
Definitely.
And for our studios here in Nashville, Tennessee, you folks have a good night. We'll see you next time.
Good night.